This is the story of a 16-year-old kid working as a diamond sorter who ended up creating India's fastest growing business and briefly became the world's second richest person. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video of our channel and a third case study. This time on the rise of the Adani Group. Let's uncover their story, strategies and secrets behind the success. And no, it's not Modi ji. I've written an entire book on it. More on that later. Gautam Adani was born on 24th June 1962 to a very humble family in Ahmedabad. His father was a textile merchant and his mother was a homemaker, like most Indian mothers at that time. He was one of 7 siblings, and as a kid it's said that Gautam Adani was very good when it came to studies. However, after his 10th grade, he decided to drop out and move to Mumbai to start working as a diamond sorter at Mahindra Brothers. Here is more about the same from the man himself.
I was just 16 years old when I chose to give up my education and move to Mumbai. And after working at Mahindra Brothers for about 3 years, I left to start my own brokerage in a diamond trading at a Javeri Bazaar. I still recall the day I did my first trade with a Japanese buyer. I made a commission of rupees 10,000.
However, this did not last very long. In 1981, Gautam Adani shifted back to Ahmedabad to join his brothers Vasant Adani and Mansukh Adani in their plastic processing and trading business. The business was largely along manufacturing plastic films and selling it to packaging companies. His job early on taught him a lot of important skills and gave him exposure to things like sourcing and importing raw materials, marketing, sales, manufacturing, managing finances, and so on. Now this is where the story really starts. Just a few years later, in mid-1980s, India was facing an economic crisis. The situation became so bad that RBI had to sell some of our country's gold to bolster its depleting foreign reserves. Basically, the reason for this problem was that while our exports were very low, our imports were very high. So to combat the same, the government then, under Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, implemented a lot of policies to encourage Indian exports. And the Adani brothers jumped at this opportunity. And this is how Adani Exports came into being in 1988. They decided to shut their plastic processing business and move all into exports. They also had a massive advantage. Now, how are most goods exported? Through the sea, right? And Gujarat had the country's longest coastline. So being located in Gujarat was a massive advantage. In 1990, the American food firm Cargill comes into the picture. Cargill was largely looking to export salt through the Mundra Port, and they chose Adani's as their partner. It was supposed to be a 50-50 joint venture, and as a part of this deal, they were planning on acquiring and developing the Mundra Port. However, this deal did not go through. Why? Because Cargill later on demanded a higher stake. And after the deal fell apart, Cargill decided to export their salt from the Kandla port, which was a much bigger and much more developed port. But this deal not going through was probably a blessing in disguise for the Adani Group. Over the last few years, while involved in the exporting business, Gautam Adani had come across a lot of inefficiencies in a lot of Gujarati ports, like the Kandla port and the Oka port. Fortunately for him, this was also the time when the government in power, both first under Chimmanbhai Patel and later under Keshubai Patel, were looking at the infrastructural and industrial development of Gujarat while leveraging Gujarat's coastal advantage. Private participation was finally encouraged for the first time. So in 1995, with a 74-26 partnership along with the state government, Adani ended up acquiring and developing the Mundra Port. And this is how Adani Ports comes into being in 1998. Now the Mundra Port set the foundation for the Adani Group. If you've watched my last case study on Reliance Industries, you would know about the Jamnagar refinery, right? So the Mundra Port was to the Adani Group what the Jamnagar refinery was for Reliance Industries and the Ambanis. It was the acquisition and success of the Mundra Port that led to them acquiring more ports around the country. And also it was the Mundra Port that ensured their entry into other businesses such as power generation, power transmission, coal mining, renewable energy, and so on. How exactly did this happen? Well, let's figure that out. But before that, let me tell you something. This video is an oversimplified version of everything that happened. Now there is only so much I can really talk about in a 10 to 12 minute long video. So let me just go ahead and mention my book before we continue. The Rise and Fall ? Of Gautam Adani. This book ends up talking about a lot of the things that we will discuss in this video and we have already discussed in a lot of detail, such as how exactly did Gautam Adani transform the Mundra Port, a lot of risk-taking abilities that he showed in the early days at the plastic processing business. We also have an entire chapter dedicated to the Hindenburg saga and another chapter dedicated to all the political controversies surrounding the Adani Group and Gautam Adani. So if that's something that interests you, do definitely check this book out. I've mentioned the Amazon link in the description below. Now let's go ahead and understand how exactly Mundra Port led to a lot of the other businesses. When Mundra Port was developing, there was a plan to build a dedicated power facility of 330 megawatts for it. And while evaluating this plan, Gautam Adani stumbled upon another business opportunity. India was a power deficit country and there was a desperate need for us to increase our power capacity. And this is when Adani Power comes into being. Within 3 years of commissioning the first 330 megawatt power plant, Adani Group already had a total capacity of 4,620 megawatts, and today it sits at 14,000 megawatts. Once Adani Group forayed into power generation, the next business opportunity was transmitting this power. So Adani Transmission comes into being. And how exactly is power generated? Through coal, right? So they started acquiring coal mines in Indonesia and the very controversial Carmichael coal mines in Australia. Now this brings us to the first strategy and secret behind their success: vertical integration. Vertical integration is where a business takes control of multiple stages of that business operations. For instance, let us consider the electricity that we get at our homes. Firstly, coal has to be mined somewhere, and then this coal has to be shipped and transferred to the nearest power generation facility. And then this coal is converted to electricity and then transmitted to our homes, right? Now Adani Group controls the coal mines where this coal is mined from, and then this coal gets exported to the ports, again owned by the Adani Group. And from there, it goes to the power generation facilities, once again owned by the Adani Group, where the coal gets converted into electricity and transmitted through Adani's transmission lines into our homes. This is vertical integration. But the big question is, how exactly was Adani Group able to grow so fast, scale so fast, and enter so many different businesses? This brings us to their next secret and strategy, a much dreaded 4-letter word: DEBT, debt. While a lot of individuals and companies shy away from debt and prioritize reducing it, debt has been the cornerstone for the success of the Adani Group. As of today, the total debt of Adani Group sits at $30 billion or 2.5 lakh crore.
अगर कभी अडानी का बलून फटा तो सारे बैंक बर्बाद.
But while these debt figures might seem very alarming, it is all backed by revenue and infrastructural assets. Let us assume that Adani Group uses this debt to build a solar farm. Once commissioned, this solar farm would be producing electricity which would be sold to the government at a pre-decided fixed rate. And this revenue that they generate on a monthly basis would then be used to pay back the debt, and whatever profits would be left would be used for further expansion. The international rating agency Fitch said this about Adani Group's debt: "We believe the Adani Group companies have long established infrastructure assets with strong fundamentals and cash flows." The third and the final secret behind the success of the Adani Group is their constant adaptation to the changing times. Remember when export policies were changed during Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's era? At that point in time, the Adani brothers shut their entire plastic processing business and moved completely to exports. That was just one example. Let's look at another one. In the recent times, there has been a move to move away from fossil fuels to renewable energy. So Adani Group now started Adani Renewable Energy in 2015. Further, with all the excessive coal that they would be mining, they plan on converting this coal into plastic. In the recent times, Adani Group of companies have also ventured into other areas of potential opportunity, such as data center business, hydrogen power, airports, real estate, and many more.
कर्नाटका, हिमाचल, कश्मीर, सब जगह अदानी 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 अदानी. एक दो बिजनेस करते थे, अब ये 8-10 सेक्टर्स में काम करते हैं. एयरपोर्ट्स, डेटा सेंटर्स, सीमेंट, सोलर एनर्जी, विंड एनर्जी, एरोस्पेस एंड डिफेंस, consumer finance, renewables.
Now, since we've already mentioned Rahul Gandhi, before we conclude this video, let's just have a brief look at all the political controversies surrounding Gautam Adani and the Adani Group. We will look at two claims made by the opposition and then also one data point, which is primarily the growth of the Adani Group, firstly during the UPA Congress-led era and then during the BJP-led NDA era. The first claim is the 1 rupee land. Rahul Gandhi claimed that the Modi government sold land to Gautam Adani at very cheap rates, 1 rupee per square meter. Well, let's look at the reality of this. Adani started acquiring land around the Mundra Port in 1993 when Congress-backed Chimmanbhai Patel government was in power in Gujarat, and this land was sold to him for 10 paisa per square meter. In 1995, under CM Keshubhai Patel, the Adani Group acquired land at 1 rupee per square meter. They continued this land buying spree in 1996 under Chief Minister Shankar Sinha Waghela government, again supported by the Congress party, and at this point in time, the land was sold at 1.5 rupee per square meter. Lastly, 5,590 hectares was acquired in 2005 under Chief Minister then Narendra Modi for 14 rupees and 50 paisa per square meter. And something funny about this land, the land acquired by Gautam Adani was marshy and often underwater during the monsoon seasons. This land was undesirable and hence worthless. Now let's look at another claim around airports, that all these airports were sold to the Adani Group. Firstly, the word selling has been used very deceptively here. These are all 50-year long contracts on a PPP model, which is public-private partnership. The AAI, or Airport Authority of India, also released the data with regards to the bids made for each of these airports. These bids largely signify the revenue per passenger payable to the Airport Authority of India. And as you can see here, Adani Enterprises had the highest bids for all of these airports. Now let's look at the growth rate of three different Adani group of companies. Firstly, under the Congress-led UPA government, and then under the BJP-led NDA government. Do note that all of these figures are going to be CAGR, so it's all annual growth rate. Adani Enterprises. Revenue growth under Congress party was 14.07% and profit growth was 33.77% between 2004 and 2014. Under BJP, this was 10.49% revenue and 0.97% in terms of profit. Adani Ports. Under Congress and allies, it was 47.78% growth in revenue and 88.94% growth in profitability. Under the BJP and allies, it was 16.86% in terms of revenue and 13.4% in terms of profitability. And lastly, coming to Adani Power, the growth rate was 149.90% per annum under Congress and allies between 2004 and 2014, whereas it was just 11.86% under BJP and allies between 2014 and 2023. So that pretty much sums it all. It is clearly evident from the above data that Adani Group's revenue and profit growth was way more in the UPA era than in the BJP era. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful. By the way, do you know who's the biggest inspiration of Gautam Adani? It's Dhirubhai Ambani and Reliance Industries. So if you haven't checked out that case study already, do go ahead and check it out. We'll bring another case study for you next week. So do subscribe and stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching.